Hi everybody and welcome back to Teachers Talk Money, where I help teachers master their money in order to give back to it themselves. Today I'm going to be giving you guys a recap on how my dry January 2021 went, whether or not I stayed sober, what that experience was like, and all of the benefits and drawbacks that I experienced as a result of being sober for a month. So I'm going to come right off the bat and say that this year, unlike my first attempt at dry January, I did not drink a sip of alcohol for the entire month, so it was successful. I saw it all the way through, and I also didn't really feel like I had too many regrets about the times that I abstained from drinking as well, which was pretty awesome. When I decided to do dry January, and in my first video about this last month, I talked a lot about how this dry January is pretty much on easy mode, and that was mostly true because I didn't have the same FOMO I would normally have if my friends were going out and I wasn't drinking with them or decided not to go out with them. And that's simply because obviously there just weren't as many social situations, and the few social situations that I was in, they were small gatherings and they weren't in places like bars or clubs or even restaurants where I would feel maybe more tempted to drink in that situation. Now, I will say the few times I was able to meet up with friends this month, it definitely came with the slight temptation to drink simply because my friends were. I definitely was in a few situations where I was like, dang, it would be cool if I could have a drink with my friends who are drinking now too. That being said, it was like a pang of temptation, and then everything was fine, and ultimately I did not regret not drinking with them. I still had a great time and felt notably better the next day than I otherwise might have. In addition to the few times that I was tempted to drink socially, it is also very notable that this was a very high anxiety month for me and most Americans and almost all DC residents as well. There was an insurrection on the 6th day of this month, and then the process of impeachment, the inauguration, threats of violence, all compiled on top of the pandemic, which is as bad as ever in my area. So it was certainly more difficult to be sober as an American and a DC resident than I thought it was going to be. But I'm actually really glad that during this time for me, one of my negative coping mechanisms was really taken off the table. And that definitely allowed me to sort of sit with every reaction and emotion and opinion that I had versus trying to numb it as these tough situations sort of kept continually coming up. So that was a huge benefit of being sober this month, and I'm going to, in the rest of this video, describe what the other benefits for me were. Now, I want to preface this by saying that I am like really terrible at noticing difference in my body and my experience and sort of like connecting those to outside factors like whether or not I'm drinking, for example. So I'm just going to state what my experience was, and I'm not necessarily saying that all of these were tied to giving up alcohol. I really can't say that with any level of certainty because obviously there are just a lot of other factors in my life that did and didn't change. And so I am just going to tell you what my experience was, with the implication that it may or may not be tied to my doing dry January this year. So here are some of the things I noticed. Number one, my sleep has definitely improved this month. I have been working on my sleep for a number of months, especially since starting to sort of get into a routine with not going into work and working from home. And so sleep has been really good for me, honestly, for the past, 8 months or so. But this month I definitely noticed even more of a shift, and that's that I felt like I was able to be more consistent with my sleep schedule. I don't think I took a single nap this month, actually, which is pretty good. I'm kind of bad at napping. And I also noticed that I haven't experienced the same trouble falling asleep as consistently as I normally would. There were definitely some days this month where I had a little bit of trouble falling asleep, but for the most part, it was an easy process. I've been going to bed early and sleeping through the night, or at least sleeping very soundly, kind of compared to how I normally would be. So in general, lots of improvement on the sleep front, which is fantastic because that is obviously really the foundation of the rest of my health, in my opinion. I've also almost always felt really well rested afterwards. There were a couple days where I definitely felt groggy the next day, but it was always because I made the choice to stay up late that night for whatever reason. And so factoring in that information, I feel like I just overall was able to get better quality sleep this month. Once again, don't know how much of that I can attribute to not drinking, but I am certain that a certain percentage of it I can contribute to this factor. I also noticed a change in my eating habits and diet, and I think that this was actually a negative change for me. I noticed that I overate more often and late night snacked and things like that way more often than I normally would. I'd like to make the note that when I'm talking about overeating, I just mean that I'm not really eating based on hunger or what my body is telling me, but instead I'm eating based on like boredom or to cope with anxiety or depression or just any reason for eating that isn't just like I want sustenance or I want to enjoy a meal. So I'm not counting calories or weight in this section at all. I'm really just kind of going off of my experience intuitively with my diet. I think that the reason that this negative change happened was because I maybe subconsciously was trying to replace one crutch for overwhelm and bad feelings with another crutch. And so while I may not have overeaten before, I might have been using alcohol as a way to self-medicate, I guess, if you can say that. And definitely this month with everything going on in the nation and also just personally in my life, I've certainly been experiencing low-level anxiety pretty consistently, and then there have been moments of even greater tension or stress or overwhelm. The third change I want to talk about is just really the empowerment that I felt from this challenge and the empowerment that came with, you know, having some self-discipline and being able to say no to things. And for me, for this, I guess I just feel like seeing that I was able to, in social situations when I was tempted to drink, say no to that, and that it was totally fine. My friends didn't care, obviously, because they're not bad friends. And that really it didn't impact the way I experienced the night too much either. Just shows me that drinking doesn't have to be this compulsory thing that I do every time I'm around somebody else that is drinking. So honestly, just seeing that I have more of a choice in saying no than I maybe normally allow myself to have, I think I'm gonna be more likely to abstain from drinking in social situations occasionally in the future, which will honestly significantly lower the amount of alcohol I'm consuming on the whole. So if I'm in situations in the future where I feel like drinking won't add that much value to the experience or will significantly sort of harm me the day after with how I'm feeling, then I definitely feel more like willing and aware that saying no is not only an option, but one that's actually really easy, doable, and won't make my night that much worse. So these were all the notable changes from my dry January. I'm really happy I decided to give this a try another year around because obviously the first one I cut it off a little bit short, which was fine, but it's nice to be able to say that I actually completed the challenge. And I think I'm probably going to start doing this as a yearly practice, maybe even biannually. I know some people do a dry January and a dry July, which I think is pretty cool. So I don't know, I mean, I'll decide next year when January is coming up, but I really felt like this was a great way to reinvigorate my motivation for health and wellness and sort of take this time as a restart to recommit myself to the things that are important to me in my physical body. I highly encourage anyone interested to give this a try, and I'd also love to know if you relate to any of the things that I experienced over dry January. Leave me a comment down below if you experienced some of these same things or had totally different things that you noticed as a result of giving up alcohol for a month. Thank you so much for joining me here on the channel. Please make sure to like this video, comment on it, subscribe, hit the notification bell. All of these things do so much to help me grow my channel and reach more people with this advice. Have a fantastic week, everyone, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!